I will never understand the type of dude whose brain is like, I'm going to go into the wild.
You've seen the 2007 movie or even read the 1997 book, but the real story of the man behind Into the Wild is a lot more twisted and confusing than you'd probably ever think. Chris McCandless' death was far from straightforward. Rife with missteps and miscalculations, his final fate may have been completely out of his hands. Today we're exploring everything that had to go wrong for Chris McCandless to meet his fate. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. Leave a comment and let us know what topics you would like to hear about next.
More bears, please.
Forget the boogeyman or Freddy Krueger. After learning about Chris McCandless, the subject of your nightmares is going to be potato seeds. In his 1996 book, Into the Wild, author Jack Krakauer asserts that McCandless perished from starvation caused by consuming, you guessed it, poisonous potato seeds. In one of McCandless's final journal entries, he wrote, "Extremely weak, fault of potato seeds." In his research, Krakauer found that based on the number of potato seeds in the proximity of the bus, McCandless had probably been eating poisonous wild potato plant seeds for weeks, not just for a day or two towards the end of his life. In Krakauer's own experience, wild potato plants were growing everywhere I looked in the surrounding taiga. I filled a 1-gallon bag with more than a...
Yeah, guess what, dog? Here's why Freddy Krueger remains on top as, being in my nightmares. Because I ain't going out in the fucking wild like that. Okay? Guess what, dude? I'm never thinking about potatoes like that, ever. Okay? Because all the potatoes I have, well, I'm having them in the confines of my home, right? I'm having them at McDonald's. Like, I'm not going to be having them out in the fucking wild. You know? See, this is like equivalent to people being like, bears are actually very cute. You should pet them. You know? Like, are people that say camping is great, you should go to Yosemite, while we're in the middle of looking at what happens when camping goes wrong, is like, are you a campsite serial killer operating out of Yosemite? Why do you want me to go there? Awfully suspicious of you. To just say, hey, man, don't you even think about it, okay? Things are so chill.
Pound of seeds in less than 30 minutes. But wild potato plant seeds were not considered to be poisonous, so the potato plant theory was dead in the water. But then, after reading a paper by Ronald Hamilton, a metaphorical light bulb appeared over Krakauer's head. The Hamilton paper recalled an experiment conducted by German forces in World War II, in which camp inmates were slowly poisoned using a ground-up legume. Their symptoms reminded him of descriptions of McCandless's final days, so, following his hunch, Krakauer sent the seed samples to a Michigan lab. The lab results confirmed Krakauer's hunch. The disease brought on by this type
experiment
of poisoning is called neolatherism, or, if that's too much of a mouthful for you, latherism for short. Latherism involved a neurological breakdown that results in weakness, paralysis, and, ultimately, loss of life. So even though his initial report said McCandless died of starvation, the real answer was clearly a little bit more complicated than that. As an able-bodied 24-year-old dude, you would think Chris was in the best shape of his life, but that may have actually worked against him when it came to his bad luck with wild potato plant seeds. Remember that paper by Ronald Hamilton we were just talking about? Well, Hamilton based his theories on medical experiments conducted at the Vapniarka concentration camp during World War II. At Vapniarka, located in the Ukraine, prisoners were given pea fodder in their bread to assess potential side effects. Individuals at the camp started limping and, within just a few months, were so weak that they had to crawl around the camp if they wanted to get around. The more the men ate, the worse the effects were, and there was no way to reverse it. After World War II, scientists used this information to explore the toxicity of the poison, Lathyrus sativus. Dr. Arthur Kessler, a doctor who was actually a prisoner at Vapniarka, spent the rest of his life in studying and caring for victims of Lathyrus sativus. Further study determined that while all individuals exposed to the toxin were susceptible to its effects, men between the ages of 15 and 25, especially those with low-calorie diets, regimens of heavy physical activity, and nutrient deficiencies, were impacted most severely. Initially, the seeds from the site where McCandless died were tested at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and came back negative for swainsonine, an alkaloid poison. It was only after Krakauer came into the picture that more seeds were analyzed for the presence of OPAD, the toxin protein from Hamilton's paper. Dr. Craig Larner from the Michigan lab found levels of OPAD in the seeds.
What caused him to go into the wild? Was he poisoned by the potato beforehand? Because I feel like that's the weird shit. Not him dying. No, it's not a plane crash. This guy actually went out there, no? No. This is the guy who literally was like, no, I want to live out there.
Concentration significant enough to cause latherism. Given the large number of seeds McCandless was likely consuming, his age, and his overall malnutrition, he would have been highly susceptible to the debilitating condition. Krakauer ultimately agreed with Hamilton, who concluded, McCandless did indeed starve to death in the Alaskan Wild, but this only because he'd been poisoned, and the poison had rendered him too weak to move about, to hunt or forage, and, toward the end, extremely weak. Too weak to walk out, and having much trouble just to stand up. He wasn't truly starving in the most technical sense of that condition. He'd simply become slowly paralyzed. Considering his final journal entries stopped containing full words and morphed into a series of slashes, we can only guess just how weak and in pain he really was. When Chris McCandless set out for his post-college Alaskan adventure, he was determined to live off the land. In 2007, chemists posited that McCandless's seeds were contaminated with Rhizotonia lumicola, the mold that causes Swainsonine. Some thought it was possible that when McCandless stored his food, it got moldy. There's no way to be certain how Chris stored his seeds, berries, and the meat of small animals, but we can probably guess that they weren't stored in Ziploc freezer bags. However, in an experiment to test this mold theory, scientists Edward Treadwell and Thomas Clausen attempted to grow mold on two types of legume seeds found near Bus 142, aka the site of Chris's death. Interestingly, no trace of Swainsonine was found. McCandless's final resting place was in his homemade base at an abandoned bus along the Stampede Trail. Hikers and hunters who traversed the area used the bus as a place of refuge, and so did Chris. 2 weeks after his death, his remains were discovered inside the rusty shelter in September of 1992. A note on the door read, "Attention all possible visitors. SOS. I need your help. I am injured, near death, and too weak to hike out of here. I am all alone. This is no joke. In the name of God, please remain to save me. I am out collecting berries close by and shall return this evening. Thank you, Chris McCandless." August.
So what happened? I guess someone said he wanted to die out there, but turns out he didn't.
Other than the no-joke note, Chris never did anything to draw attention to his position. In a twist of bad luck, the bus wasn't near any flight paths, so we couldn't have signaled for aid that way. However, some theorize he could have lit a fire large enough to be seen in the nearby town of Healy or at other hunting camps in the area. According to his sister Corrine McCandless, Chris would never ever intentionally burn down a forest, not even to save his life. Anyone who would suggest otherwise doesn't understand the first thing.
He was brave and he's a hero to many autistic people, so you better stop the slander. We've seen two different people that got the worst kinds of autism. One, bear autism. The other one, nature autism. Both of which ended up killing them. Turns out, like, the best kind of autism is just map autism, okay? All of the other types of autism, or train autism, the other types of autism ends up killing you, okay? That is not for you to decide. No, just like indoor autisms are far more preferable to like any kind of autism experienced outdoors, with the exception of train autism or plane autism. See, Murad immediately went, dude, planes are the best when he heard that.
About my brother. Regardless of whether Chris could have avoided his untimely fate or not, it's clear that his journey made a lasting imprint on the world as we know it. since it was popularized by John Krakauer's article and later his 1996 nonfiction book Into the Wild. It's gone on to be a 2008 movie directed by Sean Penn, starring
you're wearing
Emil
the
Hirsch,
Carhartt, bro.
and even scored by Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder. Additionally, in 2011, Twin Star Press published Back to the Wild, a book of photographs, journal entries, and postcards from McCandless during his journey from the western U.S. to Alaska. In 2015, McCandless' sister Corrine wrote a celebrated memoir, The Wild Truth, about her struggles with her brother's legacy. Later that same year, PBS released a 60-minute documentary on McCandless called Return to the Wild. To say Chris's story is an inspiration is an understatement. His spirit, attitude, and determination, especially during the end of his life, continue.
Okay, am I crazy? Is this because there was a lot of media surrounding this guy? Because what is inspiring, dude? Inspired to do what? Die outdoors? What the fuck? No, I thought they made kids read this because it was like, it was to show children like to not go outside. You know what I mean? Like, oh, as a warning. Because everyone's like, oh, dude, like, you know, they taught us this, like, we had to read it at school. And I thought it was because, like, oh, you live in, like, Alaska or something, and they're just trying to teach you a valuable lesson that at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break. And, like, you have to defend yourself against that. And the easiest way to do that is by subscribing for $5 or for free. You know? That's right. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
Continues to inspire people long after he's been gone. Regardless of how many factors it took for Chris McCandless to meet his maker, it's clear the world lost a bright star on that 1992 day. What do you think about Chris McCandless' story? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos.
The Revenant.
I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it at all. I do think that it comes from a place of privilege. To constantly want to seek out death like this, like to go out of your way to seek out death like this must be a byproduct of a profound amount of privilege. But then again, I grew up in a pretty fucking affluent family, you know? Like, I was very privileged. So why the fuck don't I have that? I don't understand it. I've never fucked with any of this shit. I've never been like, yeah, I can't wait to put myself in a horrible situation. I don't get it.